The planet Xylar floated in deep space, far from any known trade route. It was silent, dark, and forgotten. 200 years ago, explorers marked it as dangerous, after every ship that entered its orbit vanished without a trace. Some said strange creatures lived there. Others said the planet itself was alive. But no one ever came back to tell the truth. Now, after centuries of mystery, a new research ship called the Horizon broke through the thick clouds of Xylar. It carried a small crew of scientists, soldiers, and one man whose presence felt heavier than the rest, Captain Reed. Reed stood near the main window, watching the green mist move across the planet's surface. He was calm, too calm for someone landing on a world with such a deadly history. His face carried the marks of battles long past. A scar ran from his left eye down to his neck, and his sharp gaze showed he had seen things most people could never imagine. As the ship entered the atmosphere, lightning flashed across the clouds. The pilot, a young officer named Elin, tried to sound brave. "Captain, scanners show strange readings, no life signs, but movement. Like the planet is breathing." Reed didn't reply. He only said, "Take us down. Let's find out what hides beneath." The ship landed in a flat valley surrounded by black mountains. The ground was covered in ash and strange, glowing plants that looked alive. The air was heavy and warm. Every step the crew took echoed through the stillness. The silence felt wrong, too quiet, too empty. Even the wind refused to blow. Dr. Hale, the team's scientist, knelt beside a rock that shimmered with blue veins. "These crystals could power entire cities," he said with awe. "No wonder so many came here." But Reed wasn't listening. His eyes scanned the shadows at the edge of the valley. Something about the silence made his instincts tighten. As night approached, the crew built their base, a set of small domes and light towers. The sun of Xylar sank quickly, leaving a red haze across the horizon. Reed ordered the team inside. "No one goes out after dark," he said firmly. "This place is watching us." Some laughed nervously. They thought the captain was just being overcautious. Inside the camp, everyone tried to relax. The engineers checked the ship's power core. Dr. Hale studied samples. The air was thick with tension. Then came a strange sound, a low vibration, almost like a growl, deep beneath the ground. "Did you hear that?" Elin whispered. The sound faded, leaving everyone silent again. Later that night, one of the guards, Private Terran, was walking his patrol route. He was bored, playing with his scanner. "Nothing here," he muttered. Then the scanner blinked. Movement detected. He turned quickly, shining his light toward the forest edge. The beam hit something, two glowing eyes, reflecting back at him. His breath caught in his throat. The eyes blinked once, and vanished. Terran called for backup. "Command, I saw something." But his voice cut off mid-sentence. The rest of the crew rushed out, weapons ready. "Terran!" Reed shouted. No answer. They followed the trail of his footprints into the dark. Then they saw it, the ground torn apart, deep claw marks in the dirt, and blood smeared across the rocks. No body. Only his broken helmet, crushed like paper. Elin's voice shook. What could do this? Reed kneeled beside the marks, touching the soil. "Something big," he said softly. "And fast." He looked up at the black trees. "It's watching us right now." Back at the camp, panic started to grow. Some wanted to leave immediately, but the ship systems were still cooling down. They were trapped until morning. Dr. Hale tried to comfort the crew. Maybe it was just an animal. Nothing more. But no one believed him. Reed stayed outside, standing in the dim light of the towers, scanning the forest. The night stretched long and heavy. Every sound, a rustle, a click, a whisper, made hearts race. Around midnight, the mist rolled in, thick and white. Reed's radio crackled. "Captain," Elin's voice came through weakly, "the scanners show multiple signals around us. 5, no, 6. Moving fast." Reed tightened his grip on his weapon. "Stay calm. Don't break formation. But before he could finish, one of the lights exploded. The camp plunged into semi-darkness. Shadows moved between the fog. Something huge ran past, a blur. A scream tore through the air. Then silence again. When the mist cleared, 2 soldiers were gone. Their rifles lay on the ground, bent. One of the towers had deep claw slashes running down its metal. Reed examined them, each mark wider than his hand. "It's testing us," he said quietly. "It's not hunting for food. It's hunting for fear." The crew huddled inside the main dome, whispering, arguing, crying. Reed stood alone at the door, eyes fixed on the horizon. He didn't sleep. He didn't blink. Somewhere out there, in the dark forest, the apex predator was moving. The ground vibrated slightly, like footsteps beneath the earth. Dawn came pale and weak. The mist thinned, revealing a trail of destruction around the camp. Footprints, claw marks, broken trees. Dr. Hale tried to measure one of the prints and froze. This thing is over 3 meters tall." Reed looked at the print and said nothing. He simply turned to the crew and said, "Pack your gear. We move to higher ground. It won't stop." His tone was steady, but inside he felt something strange, a spark, a challenge. He had faced monsters before, but this one was different. This one wanted to prove a point. As the crew prepared to leave, Reed looked once more at the forest. A pair of glowing eyes appeared far in the distance, staring at him through the mist. Then they disappeared. He smiled slightly, the kind of smile that carried no fear at all. And somewhere deep in the jungle, the apex predator tilted its head, curious, almost confused. For the first time in its life, it had found prey that did not run. The silent planet had awakened. And the hunt had just begun. The morning on planet Xylar began with silence once again. The sun barely broke through the thick red clouds. The crew of the Horizon stood around the camp, faces pale, eyes tired. No one spoke much. The fear from last night still hung in the air like smoke that refused to fade. 2 of their men were gone. Only broken gear and bloodstains remained. Captain Reed stood near the edge of the camp, his boots sinking slightly into the soft black soil. His gaze moved across the forest line where the mist drifted between the trees. He said nothing, but everyone could tell. He was studying, calculating, listening. He was waiting for the enemy to move first. Dr. Hale walked toward him, holding a scanner that blinked with strange lights. "Captain," he said, his voice shaking, "I found more tracks behind the camp. They're huge. The same creature, I think." Reed didn't turn to him. "How many?" he asked. Hale swallowed. "At least 3. Maybe 4. Reed finally looked at him. "No. Just 1. It moves fast enough to confuse your scanner." Hale frowned, unsure, but Reed's tone left no room for argument. Inside the camp, the remaining crew were on edge. Elin tried to get the communication system working, but static filled the speakers. "No signal," she muttered. "It's like something is blocking every frequency." Another soldier, Mason, paced back and forth. "We should leave now," he said loudly. "Forget the research. We're not soldiers. We're scientists." Reed turned sharply. "If we take off now, it'll shoot us down before we leave the ground." Mason blinked. "Shoot us down? You think it's intelligent?" Reed's eyes narrowed. "I don't think. I know." The air suddenly grew colder. The wind that had been dead for hours began to whisper through the trees. The mist thickened again. Reed motioned everyone to stay quiet. The sound of movement, faint but fast, came from the east side of the valley. Something big was moving through the forest. They couldn't see it, but the sound alone made their hearts pound. Then, without warning, one of the motion sensors near the perimeter beeped. A red light flashed. Something had crossed their defense line. Reed raised his weapon. "Positions." The team spread out behind cover. The sound grew louder, branches snapping, dirt shifting. Mason aimed into the mist, finger trembling on the trigger. Reed held up his hand. Wait. Don't shoot until you see it. A dark shape moved between the trees, huge and silent. For a moment, it looked like a shadow detached from the ground itself. Then it was gone again, disappearing into the fog. Seconds later, a metallic clang echoed behind them. Something had hit the ship. Elin ran toward the control panel and gasped. It's trying to open the hull. Reed ran after her. The side of the horizon had deep claw marks running down its surface, like something was testing its strength. The metal bent inward as if it were soft clay. Sparks flew. Everyone inside. Reed shouted. Now. The crew rushed into the ship. The lights flickered as the Predator slammed against the outer walls. Each hit shook the floor. The sound of scraping claws filled the air, a horrible rhythm of power. Dr. Hale whispered, "It's studying us." Reed nodded grimly. "Yes. It's smarter than it looks." Then, suddenly, the attacks stopped. The silence returned, complete and heavy. Reed waited, gun ready. Seconds turned into minutes. Nothing moved. "Stay alert," he said softly. "It's not done." When they finally stepped outside, the mist had lifted slightly. The damage was worse than they expected. The outer sensors were ripped apart. The metal walls were dented. But what caught their attention most was a strange symbol scratched into the side of the ship, a spiral made of claw marks. Elin stared at it. "It marked us," she said quietly. Reed traced the pattern with his glove. A warning. Or maybe a message. They spent the next few hours repairing the power systems. The crew worked fast, their hands shaking, eyes darting toward the forest every few seconds. Mason muttered to himself while tightening a bolt. "Why us? Why this planet?" Dr. Hale replied without looking up. "Because humans can't resist danger. We always come looking for monsters." Reed overheard and said in a low voice, "And sometimes the monsters find us first." By afternoon, the ground began to tremble again, faint vibrations that grew stronger with each passing second. The scanners lit up once more, showing movement all around them. "It's circling us," Elin said. "Faster than before." Reed loaded a new power cell into his rifle. "Good. That means it's getting nervous." The others looked at him in disbelief. "Nervous? Captain, that thing killed our men." Reed simply replied, "Yes. But it also bled last night." The crew stared at him. "You hit it?" Mason asked. Reed nodded once. "Barely. But it felt pain. That means it can die." His words gave them a brief spark of hope, but it didn't last long. The scanners blinked again, the signal vanished completely. "It's gone," Elin said. Reed shook his head. "No. It's close." A sudden scream tore through the air. Everyone froze. The sound came from the other side of the valley, a voice, full of panic. It was Terran. Or at least it sounded like him. "Help me!" the voice cried. "Please." The crew looked at each other in shock. "That's impossible," Hale whispered. "He's dead." The voice called again, louder, closer. "Captain. It's me." Reed's face turned cold. "That's not him." The voice changed, deeper now, slower. It repeated his name again and again, mocking the tone. The forest echoed with the sound until it became unbearable. Mason covered his ears. "Make it stop." Reed raised his rifle and fired into the forest. The sound ended instantly. Only the echo of the shot remained. Then, out of the silence, a shape stepped forward. It was tall, dark, and almost human-like, but wrong. Its body shimmered like liquid metal, muscles twisting under its skin. Its face had no eyes, only a wide mouth filled with sharp teeth. In its hand, it held Terran's helmet. The Predator tilted its head slowly, as if studying them, then dropped the helmet on the ground and vanished into the mist again, faster than sight. Elin whispered, trembling, "It's playing with us." Reed stared at the empty fog. "No," he said quietly. "It's testing us. And soon, it will stop testing." As night fell again, the crew gathered inside, their nerves shattered. Outside, the mist moved like a living thing. Somewhere out there, the apex predator prepared for the real hunt. And Captain Reed, sitting in silence, whispered to himself, "Let it come." The night was darker than before. The fog was thicker, heavier, and almost alive. Every few seconds, the wind whispered through the broken trees like a warning. Inside the small base, the crew sat in silence, too afraid to sleep. The air smelled of burnt metal and fear. Captain Reed sat near the window, eyes fixed on the motion tracker. It beeped slowly, showing nothing but static. He hadn't moved for hours. His mind was sharp, focused, waiting for the next move. The apex predator was near. He could feel it, like a presence pressing against the edge of his thoughts. Dr. Hale tried to break the silence. "Maybe it's gone," he said quietly. Reed didn't answer. He knew better. Predators never left unfinished hunts. Outside, the mist swirled strangely, like it was being disturbed by something huge moving through it. Elin stared at the monitor. "Captain," she whispered, "I'm picking up a heat signature. Big. Coming straight toward us." Reed stood up slowly, checking his rifle. "Everyone, positions," he ordered calmly. "Lights to minimum. No noise. No panic." The crew scrambled to their stations, hands shaking. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly outside, slow, deliberate, powerful. Each step made the ground tremble slightly. Then came silence again. Only the sound of their breathing filled the air. Reed turned to the door and whispered, "It's watching." A second later, the lights flickered. The power core made a strange noise, like metal being crushed. "What's happening?" Elin cried. Sparks flew from the control panel. The whole camp went dark. Total silence. Total black. Then, out of the darkness, something slammed into the side of the dome. The entire structure shook. The crew screamed. Reed shouted, "Stay down." The wall tore open, and there it was. The apex predator burst through the metal like paper. It was enormous, towering, covered in black scales that shimmered in the light of their flashguns. Its face was a nightmare of bone and muscle, and its claws glowed faintly blue. It moved like lightning, 1 second in front of them, the next already behind. Mason fired his weapon wildly, plasma bolts slicing through the air. None of them hit. The creature grabbed him by the arm and threw him across the camp like he was weightless. He hit the wall and didn't move. Reed raised his weapon and fired a single precise shot. The blast hit the creature's shoulder, burning through its armor. It roared, a deep, vibrating sound that shook the air itself. For the first time, they saw it bleed. Blue smoke hissed from the wound. "It bleeds," Reed said coldly. "That means it can die." The predator charged. Reed dodged to the side, rolling as claws sliced through where he had just been. Sparks and dust flew everywhere. He jumped to his feet and fired again, hitting the creature's leg. It staggered, then slammed its tail into him with brutal force. Reed crashed into a crate and coughed hard, blood on his lip. The crew tried to help, but Reed shouted, "Stay back. It's mine." The fight turned fast and brutal. Reed moved like no normal human. His reflexes were beyond anything the others had seen. Every motion was precise, every shot perfectly timed. The predator swiped at him again, claws cutting through metal and air, but Reed ducked and countered with a short blade, slicing deep into its arm. The creature screamed, a mix of rage and pain. For a moment, they locked eyes, man and monster. Two predators, both refusing to back down. Elin whispered, "He's fighting it alone." Dr. Hale pulled her back. "He's not just a soldier," he said. "Look at him. He's something else." Reed lunged again, striking hard, but the creature grabbed him mid-attack and threw him through a wall. The dome's structure collapsed slightly. Reed lay still for a moment, then pushed himself up slowly. His breathing was heavy but steady. The predator approached, growling low, its movements slower now, more cautious. Reed wiped the blood from his face and smirked faintly. "You're strong," he said. "But not strong enough." He pressed a button on his wrist. Small drones activated around him, glowing red. They flew in circles, firing rapid bursts of energy at the predator. The creature howled in anger, slashing at them. Reed used the distraction to run forward, jumping onto its back. He stabbed his blade into its neck. Blue blood sprayed across his armor. The predator spun wildly, trying to throw him off. Reed held tight, shouting, "You wanted a fight. Now you have one." Finally, the predator slammed backward into a metal tower, crushing Reed against it. The impact sent shockwaves through the ground. Reed fell to his knees, gasping. The predator turned, limping but still alive. It reached down to grab him, but Reed pulled out a grenade and shoved it into the wound on its shoulder. He rolled away just as it exploded. The creature screamed in rage and pain, falling to one knee. Smoke and blue light poured from its wounds. The crew watched in disbelief. Dr. Hale whispered, He's winning." But Reed wasn't celebrating. He stood slowly, chest heaving. "No," he said softly. "It's learning." The predator rose again, burned and bleeding, but its movements were sharper now, smarter. It looked at Reed with something that almost resembled respect, or maybe fury. Then it let out a sound like a deep growl mixed with a laugh. It turned away, limped into the mist, and disappeared. The silence returned once more. Only the hum of damaged equipment filled the air. Elin ran to Reed. "Captain, are you all right?" He nodded slowly. Still standing. He looked at the blood on his blade, glowing blue like fireflies. "It bleeds," he repeated, almost to himself. "And next time, I'll finish it." The crew helped him back inside. Mason was still unconscious but alive. Dr. Hale looked at Reed with a mixture of awe and fear. "Captain," he said, "no human should be able to fight like that." "What are you?" Reed looked out the broken window toward the forest where the predator had vanished. His voice was quiet, almost cold. "Just a man," he said. "But that's usually enough." Outside, in the distance, the apex predator roared again. The sound echoed through the valley, shaking the ground beneath them. It was not a roar of victory or defeat. It was a promise. The hunt wasn't over. Reed stood straight, gripping his weapon tightly. "Round one's done," he murmured. "Now it knows I'm coming for it." The crew stared at him, realizing something terrifying. Their captain wasn't just trying to survive. He was preparing to hunt. The night on Xylar ended with a strange stillness. Somewhere in the dark forest, the wounded predator watched from the shadows, its eyes burning with rage. And far above, in the silent sky, lightning flickered like war drums. The first clash was over. The real battle had just begun. The storm rolled across the dark sky of Xylar like a living thing. Lightning flashed through the red clouds, lighting up the torn camp below. The air smelled of smoke, blood, and burned metal. The crew of the Horizon worked in silence, repairing what was left after the attack. Every sound made them flinch. Every shadow made them turn. But Captain Reed moved calmly among them, checking systems, giving short orders, his voice firm and steady. No one dared question him now. They had seen what he could do. They had watched a man fight a monster that no one believed could be hurt. And he had survived. Inside the command dome, Dr. Hale stared at a data screen filled with strange readings. Reed's fight had been recorded by the ship's sensors. The results made no sense. His reflex speed was far beyond human limits. His heart rate barely changed, even in combat. The power in his strikes, the way his wounds healed faster than normal, it was impossible. Elin entered quietly, holding a medkit. "Is he okay?" she asked. Hale didn't answer at first. He turned to her and whispered, "He's not just okay. He's something else." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Hale hesitated, then opened a secure file he had found in the ship's database. It was marked Classified, Project Titan. The file contained medical reports, combat tests, and a single line that made Elon's breath catch. Subject 07, Captain Aaron Reed, Human Enhancement Program. Hale whispered. He's part of an old experiment. A government project to create super soldiers. They shut it down years ago. Too dangerous. Elon stared at the screen. You mean, he's not normal? Hale shook his head slowly. No. He's more than normal. He's built for war. Outside, Reed stood alone under the storm, watching the forest. The lightning flashed across his scarred face. His armor was damaged, blood still dried on his hands. He looked calm, but inside, something old and buried was waking up. He could feel the predator out there. He could feel its hunger, its intelligence. It wasn't just a beast. It was a test. And deep down, Reed knew, he had been made for this. Elon approached him carefully. Captain, she said softly, you need rest. He didn't look at her. Rest later, he said. It's not done yet. She hesitated, then asked, What are you? He turned slowly to face her, his eyes dark and unreadable. I'm what humans become when survival is the only goal, he said. Then he walked away, leaving her standing in the rain. Hours later, the crew gathered around the central table. Reed spread a map of the valley. It's studying us, he said. Learning our weapons, our routines. It knows our patterns now. That means we have to change. Mason, still bandaged and pale, muttered. You talk like you understand it. Reed looked up. I do. He pointed to the mountains east of their camp. It's coming from there. That's its nest. If we want to live, we take the fight to it. Dr. Hale slammed his hand on the table. You're insane. That thing tore through our defenses in seconds. We're not soldiers, Captain. We're scientists. Reed's voice turned sharp. Then start acting like scientists. Adapt, improvise, survive. That's what humans do best. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Elon finally asked, What if there's more than one? Reed paused. The storm rumbled outside. Then we kill them all. Later that night, as the others prepared weapons and scanners, Hale sat alone, staring at the Project Titan file. He replayed Reed's combat footage in slow motion. The man's movements were too precise, too powerful. Bones that should have broken didn't. Muscles that should have torn didn't. There was something almost mechanical in the way he fought. What did they turn you into? Hale whispered. Outside, Reed tested his rifle, then switched it off. He didn't need it. He preferred the feel of his own hands. The power in his body pulsed like a quiet storm. The enhancements weren't just physical, they were mental. Faster processing, deeper instincts, sharper focus. But there was a cost. He could feel his emotions fading, replaced by pure logic, pure purpose. Humanity was slipping away from him, one heartbeat at a time. He looked up at the sky, whispering to himself, maybe that's the point. Suddenly, an alarm went off. Elon's voice crackled through the comms. Captain. Multiple signals, north perimeter. Reed rushed back to the dome. The scanners showed several lifeforms moving fast through the forest. Bigger than humans. Too many to count. The apex predator was not alone. The ground began to tremble. The sound of claws against stone echoed through the valley. The mist rolled in again, thicker than ever. Positions! Reed shouted. The crew grabbed weapons, fear written on every face. From the shadows, glowing eyes appeared, one pair, then two, then 10. Smaller than the main predator, but deadly all the same. Reed's voice was calm. Scouts. It sent its pack. The creatures attacked in a blur of movement. Plasma fire lit the night as the crew defended the camp. 2 soldiers went down instantly. Reed moved through the chaos like a storm, cutting down one creature after another with cold precision. His blade flashed under the lightning, his strikes fast and clean. Blue blood sprayed across the ground. Elin watched him, stunned. He wasn't fighting like a man. He was fighting like something more. The way he moved, the way he anticipated attacks before they came, it was unnatural. It was terrifying. She whispered, "He's not human anymore." When the last of the smaller predators fell, silence returned once again. Reed stood in the middle of the battlefield, breathing slowly. Around him lay bodies of alien beasts, twitching in the mud. The main apex predator was nowhere to be seen, but Reed could feel its presence. It was watching him. Waiting. Dr. Hale approached carefully. "Captain," he said, "we found your file." Reed didn't react. "We know what Project Titan was." Reed finally turned to him. "Then you know why I'm here." Hale frowned. "You were made to fight monsters?" Reed's voice was cold. "No. I was made to remind monsters what fear feels like." Lightning struck in the distance, casting shadows across the valley. Reed walked toward the forest, his armor glowing faintly in the rain. "It's learning," he said. "So am I." Behind him, the crew stood in silence, realizing a truth more terrifying than the predator itself. Their captain wasn't running from the hunt. He was becoming it. The night closed in once more, and somewhere deep in the mountains, the apex predator let out a roar that shook the earth. It was not a challenge this time. It was an answer. The real war between man and beast had begun. The storm had passed, leaving behind a dead calm. The air was heavy with the smell of burned metal and alien blood. The ground outside the camp was littered with the bodies of smaller predators, their blue blood glowing faintly in the dim light. The crew of the Horizon moved quietly, collecting equipment and sealing cracks in the damaged domes. No one spoke much anymore. Fear had settled into their bones. Every sound made them reach for their weapons. Every shadow felt alive. But Captain Reed was different. He stood outside, motionless, staring into the mist-covered forest. His armor was scratched, his face marked with dirt and blood, but his eyes were sharp and calm. He wasn't afraid. He was thinking, planning. Elin watched him from inside the control dome. "He hasn't slept in 2 days," she whispered. Dr. Hale nodded slowly. "He doesn't need to. His body was built for this. Rest is optional." Elin frowned. "Built for this? That's not human." Hale didn't answer. He looked at Reed and said quietly, "No, it isn't." Reed finally spoke through the comms. "It's watching us again. Same pattern as before. Circling, testing." He turned toward the crew. "It's trying to learn our weaknesses. But now it's my turn." His voice was low, calm, deadly. "Tonight, we hunt it." The crew froze. "You can't be serious," Mason said, his voice shaking. "That thing, those things, almost wiped us out." Reed's expression didn't change. "Which is why we can't wait for them to strike again. Predators hunt by fear. They control the battlefield. So, we take that control away." He pointed to the map on the holotable. "This valley connects to a system of caves under the mountain. That's where it hides. We go there. We finish it." Dr. Hale shook his head. "Captain, this isn't war. It's suicide." Reed's eyes turned cold. "It's survival. If we don't end it, it ends us. And I don't plan on dying on this planet." His voice carried such power that no one argued again. As night fell, the crew prepared. Reed moved through the camp, setting traps, plasma mines, motion sensors, heat decoys. He carried strange devices made from alien parts, scavenged from the fallen scouts. "What are those?" Elin asked as she watched him attach one to a tree. Reed replied simply, "They're tech. I'm giving it a new purpose." The mist rolled in again, swallowing the valley in silence. The crew followed Reed through the forest, weapons ready, hearts pounding. The air grew colder as they approached the caves. Strange symbols were carved into the stones, glowing faintly in the dark. Mason whispered, "It marks its territory." Reed glanced at him. "Not anymore." They reached the mouth of the cave, a massive opening in the rock that looked like the jaws of a sleeping beast. Reed raised his hand, signaling them to stop. "Stay here," he said. "I go first." Elin stepped forward. "No, Captain." He cut her off. "This is between us." His tone left no space for argument. Reed entered the cave slowly, his boots echoing softly against the wet stone. The darkness swallowed him whole. Inside, the air was thick and heavy, filled with the smell of blood and decay. The walls glowed faintly with strange blue light from the crystals embedded within. The further he went, the more he could feel it, the predator's presence. It was close. Watching. Waiting. Reed activated a small beacon on his wrist, marking his position for the team outside. "Stay sharp," he said into the comms. "If you lose my signal, don't come in." Elin's voice replied softly, "Be careful." Reed almost smiled. "Careful isn't what I'm built for." Deeper inside, the tunnel widened into a huge cavern. Bones lay scattered everywhere, human, alien, unrecognizable. In the center of the cave, he saw movement. The apex predator stood tall, its wounds from the last fight still glowing faintly. It was bigger than before, its body covered in new armor made from the remains of its fallen kin. It had adapted. Its intelligence was frightening. Reed stepped forward. "You've been busy," he said quietly. The predator tilted its head, studying him. Then it roared, a sound that shook dust from the ceiling. But Reed didn't flinch. He dropped his rifle and unstrapped the blade from his back. "Let's finish this," he said. The creature moved first, fast as lightning. Its claws slashed through the air where Reed had been standing a second before. He rolled aside, striking back with his blade. Sparks flew as steel met alien armor. The two circled each other, each testing the other's speed and strength. The predator struck again, claws slicing into Reed's shoulder. He grunted in pain but didn't stop. He countered with a punch that cracked the creature's jaw. Outside, the crew heard the fight through the comms, roars, crashes, explosions. Elin's hands shook as she watched the signal blink on the screen. "He's surrounded," she said. "There are more readings. Smaller ones, moving toward him." Hale's face went pale. The rest of the pack. Reed fought like a machine, every movement perfect, efficient, brutal. When one of the smaller beasts leapt from the shadows, he caught it midair and slammed it into the ground. Another lunged, he spun, cutting it clean in half. The apex predator watched, its eyes glowing like fire. For the first time, it hesitated. Reed saw it. "You feel that?" he said between breaths. "That's fear." He charged forward, driving his blade deep into its chest. The creature roared, grabbing him by the neck and throwing him across the cavern. He hit the wall hard, pain shooting through his body, but he stood up again, blood running down his face. The predator tried to retreat deeper into the cave, but Reed wasn't done. He triggered the traps he had set earlier. Explosions lit up the cavern as the mines detonated in a chain reaction. The walls shook. Fire and smoke filled the air. The predator stumbled, roaring in pain as its armor cracked. Reed leapt through the smoke, tackling it to the ground. He drove his blade again and again into its chest until it stopped moving. The cave began to collapse. Rocks fell from the ceiling. Reed stumbled out, coughing, covered in blood and dust. Behind him, the cave mouth collapsed completely, sealing the bodies inside. The forest was silent again. Elin ran to him, eyes wide. "Captain, are you?" He held up a hand. "It's done." But Hale shook his head, checking the scanner. "No, it's not. Look." The screen showed one last signal moving deep under the ground. Bigger than before. Stronger. Reed stared at it. His expression didn't change. "Then we keep hunting," he said quietly. Until there are none left. He looked out at the valley, his armor reflecting the pale light of dawn. For the first time, the apex predator wasn't hunting the humans. The humans were hunting it. And somewhere deep below, in the darkness, something growled in answer. The hunt had truly reversed. The morning light broke weakly through the dense red clouds of Xylar, but it did nothing to bring peace. The valley lay silent except for the faint hum of damaged equipment and the soft crackle of distant fires. The crew of the Horizon worked quietly, repairing what they could, their faces pale and eyes hollow. They had survived the night, but victory felt empty. Deep underground, the scanners still showed movement, slow, deliberate, powerful. Something was still alive. Something bigger than before. Captain Reed stood at the edge of the ridge, his eyes fixed on the mountain that had buried the creature's nest. He didn't speak, didn't move. The wind tugged at his torn armor, carrying the smell of smoke and alien blood. Elin approached slowly, holding a datapad. "It's still down there," she said softly. Reed didn't reply. "Dr. Hale says it's growing," she continued. "Feeding on the energy from the other creature's remains. It's changing." Reed finally turned his head slightly. "Good," he said. "Let it grow." Elin frowned. "Good. Captain, that thing is becoming stronger. It's adapting faster than we can." Reed's eyes were cold. "That's what I want. The stronger it gets, the more it shows what it truly is. Only then can I kill it." Inside the control dome, Hale studied the readings closely. The signal pulsed like a heartbeat, slow, steady, monstrous. "This isn't evolution," he muttered. "It's something else. It's learning from him." Mason looked up, confused. "From who?" Hale glanced toward the window where Reed stood. "From the captain. It's copying his tactics, his strength, even his movements. It's becoming like him." The crew fell silent. The idea that the apex predator was learning from the man who had beaten it was horrifying. "If that's true," Mason whispered, "then we've made it unstoppable." Hale didn't answer. That night, the wind howled through the valley again. The scanners went wild, strange fluctuations, faint vibrations under the ground. Then everything went quiet. Reed stood in the command center, watching the screens. His jaw tightened. "It's coming up." Hale's voice trembled. "Impossible." The cave collapsed. Reed shook his head. "Not anymore." The ground began to rumble. Outside, the trees shook violently as something massive moved beneath them. Then the earth split open. The apex predator rose from the ground in a cloud of dust and smoke. But it was not the same creature they had seen before. It was larger, its armor darker, its body lined with glowing blue veins pulsing with stolen energy. Its eyes burned brighter, filled not just with hunger, but with awareness. It looked directly at the camp, and for a moment, it almost seemed to smile. "Positions!" Reed shouted. The crew scrambled to defensive points. Plasma cannons whirred to life, drones took flight, and automated turrets aimed at the target. The predator moved slowly, almost deliberately, as if testing their readiness. Then, without warning, it vanished. The scanners blinked, unable to track it. "Where did it go?" Elin shouted. Reed didn't answer. He knew. He could feel it. A shiver ran through him, an instinct he hadn't felt before. It wasn't just watching them. It was hunting him. A blur of movement struck from the side. One of the turrets exploded. Then, another. The predator appeared inside the perimeter, tearing through metal like paper. The crew opened fire, beams of light cutting through the darkness, but it moved faster than before, weaving between shots with terrifying precision. It grabbed Mason and threw him across the field like a rag doll. Reed charged forward, blade in hand, shouting, "Focus fire on me!" He was the bait, and he knew it. The predator turned toward him. Their eyes met again, and for the first time, Reed saw something new in those alien eyes: recognition. It had studied him, learned from him, understood him. It moved like him, attacked like him. The The two clashed in a blur of motion, metal against claw, strength against power. Sparks flew, blood sprayed, the ground cracked under their feet. Every time Reed struck, the creature countered perfectly. Every move he made, it predicted. It was like fighting a mirror. Elin and Hale watched in horror from the control dome. It's copying him in real time. Hale yelled. It's using his combat patterns, his enhanced speed. It's turning into him. Reed dodged a powerful strike that shattered the ground beside him. He kicked the creature's leg, ducked under a claw, and struck back, but it barely flinched. He was running out of time. For every second he fought, it learned more. Then something strange happened. The creature hesitated. It tilted its head, just like Reed did when studying an opponent. Reed froze. In that instant, he realized something terrifying. It wasn't trying to kill him, it was becoming him. It wanted to replace him. Rage flickered in Reed's eyes. "You think you can be me?" he growled. "You're just a shadow." He grabbed a plasma charge from his belt and slammed it into the creature's chest. The explosion threw them both backward. Reed hit the ground hard, coughing, his armor smoking. The predator staggered, half its body burning, but still alive. It let out a deep growl, half roar, half human sound. It was learning how to speak. "Who, man?" it hissed, its voice broken and monstrous. The crew froze, terrified. It could mimic him now. Reed stood slowly, every muscle screaming in pain. "You should have stayed in the dark," he said, lifting his blade again. The predator roared and charged. They collided one last time, the sound echoing across the valley like thunder. Reed drove the blade deep into its neck, twisting hard. Blue blood sprayed across his armor. The creature clawed at him, trying to pull him down, but he held firm, pushing until it stopped moving. Then silence. He stood over the body, breathing heavily. The predator's glowing eyes dimmed, but its reflection still burned in Reed's mind. He had won, but at what cost? Elin ran to him, tears in her eyes. "It's over," she said. Reed shook his head slowly. "No, it's not." He pointed to the scanner on his wrist. It still showed faint signals, small ones, dozens of them, scattered across the forest. It wasn't alone. Hale's voice came through the comms, trembling. "Captain, if it could learn from you, then all of them can." Reed looked at the body one last time, then whispered, "Then they'll learn what fear really means." As dawn rose over the broken valley, the crew realized something chilling. The apex predator had feared nothing in the universe, until it met a human. And now, that same fear had spread to everything that shared its blood. Somewhere deep in the forest, the echoes of its dying roar carried on the wind. For the first time in its kind's long history, the predators trembled. But Reed didn't smile. He turned away, his expression empty. He knew this wasn't the end. The real fight was still coming. The apex was only the beginning. And as the sun burned weakly through the mist, one truth became clear. Fear wasn't just the weapon of monsters anymore. Now, it belonged to man. The sun rose over Xylar, casting long red shadows across the valley. The land was scarred, burned trees, shattered rocks, and pools of blue blood glowing faintly in the dirt. The air still smelled of smoke and ash. The crew of the Horizon moved like ghosts among the wreckage, repairing what little was left of their camp. No one spoke much anymore. They had all seen things they could never forget. Captain Reed stood on a ridge overlooking the forest, his armor dented and streaked with alien blood. His face was hard, unreadable. The body of the apex predator lay behind him, half buried in the dirt, its once bright eyes now dull and lifeless. But the victory felt hollow. He could still feel something out there, something watching. Elin approached quietly, holding a scanner. "Captain," she said, "we're getting more signals." Reed didn't turn. "How many?" he asked. She swallowed. "Dozens. Maybe hundreds. They're moving, fast." Reed's jaw tightened. "They're coming." Dr. Hale appeared beside them, his face pale. We triggered something when we killed it. The entire species must be linked. The apex wasn't just their leader, it was their hive core. Reed looked at him sharply. You mean we woke them up? Hale nodded slowly. Exactly. And they're coming here. For a long moment, Reed said nothing. The wind howled through the trees. Finally, he spoke. Then this is where we make our stand. He turned to face the crew. No more running. No more hiding. We fight, and we end this. Mason, still limping from his injuries, shouted. End this? Captain, there are too many of them. We won't last 5 minutes. Reed's expression didn't change. Then we make those 5 minutes count. The crew worked through the night. Reed directed them with calm precision, setting traps and building barricades from the wreckage of their ship. Elin and Hale rigged plasma coils to the main generator, creating an electric defense field strong enough to vaporize anything that touched it. If this fails, Elin said quietly, we're finished. Reed looked at her. Then it won't fail. Hours passed. The air grew heavy. The forest was silent, too silent. Then, faintly at first, they heard it, a low rumble like thunder rolling across the ground. The sound grew louder. The trees began to shake. Glowing blue eyes appeared in the darkness, dozens of them, then hundreds. The new breed had come. They were smaller than the apex, faster, sharper, smarter. Their bodies shimmered with faint energy patterns, their claws glowing with stolen human tech. They had learned. Reed stood at the front, gripping his blade. His voice was calm. Hold the line. No matter what happens, you don't break. The creatures roared and charged. The first wave hit the electric barrier, screaming as energy ripped through their bodies. Plasma cannons fired, drones swarmed overhead, and explosions lit up the night. The battlefield turned into chaos, screams, fire, and the sound of metal tearing flesh. But still, they kept coming. Reed moved like lightning, cutting through anything that got too close. Every swing of his blade was precise and deadly. He fought with cold fury, not for victory, but for survival. Behind him, Elin fired from the control tower, her face streaked with sweat and tears. Mason shouted over the comms, "Left flank's breaking." Reed turned and sprinted, his armor sparking from energy blasts. He leapt over debris, slashing 2 creatures apart before they could reach the line. "Hold it," he roared. Dr. Hale worked frantically at the console, monitoring the power levels. "The generator's overloading," he yelled. "If it blows, we all go with it." Elin shouted back, "Keep it running. We don't have a choice." The ground shook violently as more creatures hurled themselves at the barrier. Sparks flew. The shield began to flicker. Reed looked up and saw the largest of the new breed, taller than the others, covered in black armor that shimmered with blue light. Its eyes burned like fire. It stepped forward, unafraid of the barrier. Elin gasped. "It's immune." The creature slammed its claws into the field. Electricity danced around it, but it didn't stop. The shield cracked, sparks exploding into the air. Reed ran forward. "Target that one," he shouted. Cannons turned and fired, beams slicing into the creature's chest, but it kept moving. With one massive swipe, it tore down the barrier completely. The energy field collapsed in a flash of light. The creatures poured through the opening like a wave of death. "Fall back!" Hale screamed. The crew retreated toward the command dome, firing as they ran. Reed stayed behind, cutting down everything in his path. Elin shouted from the doorway, "Captain, come on!" He didn't move. He was staring at the massive creature as it stepped closer. The others ran for safety, but Reed didn't. He raised his blade, his voice steady. "You wanted evolution," he said quietly. "Now meet the end of it." The creature roared and charged. Reed met it head-on. The two collided with a sound like thunder. The ground cracked beneath them. The beast swung its claws, but Reed dodged, driving his blade into its side. It howled in pain, grabbing him by the arm and throwing him across the field. Reed hit the ground hard but rolled to his feet instantly. He was bleeding, exhausted, but he didn't stop. He sprinted forward again, sliding under another strike, and jammed a plasma grenade into the creature's wound. "Adapt to that," he growled. The explosion ripped through its chest, sending fire and shards of metal flying into the air. The other creatures stopped, their glowing eyes flickering. Reed staggered to his feet, coughing. The massive beast collapsed, shaking the ground. For a moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, the other creatures turned and fled back into the forest. The sky grew quiet again. Elin ran to Reed, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she said. Reed looked at the burning remains of the creature. "No," he said softly. "We only survived." Hale approached, shaking his head in disbelief. "They learned from you," he said. "But now, they'll evolve again. Faster. Stronger. And when they return, they'll remember everything." Reed's gaze hardened. "Then I'll be waiting." He looked up at the sky where distant stars shimmered faintly through the red haze. Somewhere out there, more of those creatures were watching, listening. And now, they knew what humans were capable of. They had felt fear for the first time. But fear makes things dangerous. It makes them desperate. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Reed turned to his crew. "Get the ship ready," he said. "We're not done here. This planet isn't finished teaching us yet." Elin stared at him, her voice trembling. "Captain, what if they come again?" Reed looked toward the forest, where the shadows seemed to move with quiet intent. "Then," he said, "they'll learn what happens when prey becomes the predator." The wind rose again, carrying the faint echoes of distant roars. The new breed was retreating, for now. But in the deep forests of Xylar, evolution had already begun. Something new was rising, shaped by human fury, fear, and defiance. And this time, it wouldn't tremble when the human struck, it would strike back. The sky over Xylar was blood red. Smoke rose from the shattered valley, twisting in the wind like dark ghosts. The once silent planet now echoed with the distant howls of creatures that refused to die. Captain Reed stood at the edge of the camp, staring toward the dark forest where the new breed had vanished. The air felt heavy, electric, alive with tension. Behind him, the survivors of the horizon worked in grim silence, patching the ship's hull, salvaging weapons, and preparing for the next inevitable assault. They all knew the truth now. This wasn't over. It had never been over. The apex was dead, but its children, the new breed, were evolving faster than anyone could imagine. Every hour, new signals appeared on the scanners. Every hour, they came closer. Humanity's last stand on Xylar had begun. Elin approached Reed quietly, her face pale but determined. "Captain," she said, "the power cells are at 30%. If we use the generator for the shields, the ship won't lift off." Reed didn't turn. "We're not leaving," he said flatly. "Not yet." Elin frowned. "If we stay, we die. You saw what they can do. We can't win this." Reed finally looked at her. His eyes were cold, steady. "It's not about winning. It's about making sure they never follow us home." His words hit her like a shock. "Home?" she whispered. "You think they can leave the planet?" Reed nodded slowly. "If they've learned to copy us, it's only a matter of time before they understand our tech. If one of them reaches Earth, it's over for everyone." Dr. Hale stood by the command terminal, his hands trembling as he reviewed the data. "He's right," he said softly. "They're evolving exponentially. The DNA samples we recovered, these things aren't natural. They're absorbing energy, adapting biology like a machine rewriting itself. In a few days, they'll be unstoppable." He looked at Reed. "So what's the plan?" Reed walked to the center of the camp, the faint light of the fires reflecting in his eyes. "We take them all down. Every last one. We end it here." The crew stared at him in disbelief. "You mean a suicide mission?" Mason muttered. Reed didn't deny it. Maybe, he said, but if this planet burns, humanity survives. That's all that matters. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the crackle of fire and the distant rumble of thunder. Through the night, the crew prepared for the final battle. Hale modified the ship's reactor to act as a massive bomb, powerful enough to wipe out the valley. Elin worked beside him, reprogramming the detonation sequence to trigger remotely. Reed inspected the perimeter one last time, checking every trap, every weapon, every fallback point. He moved like a machine, every motion deliberate. Inside, though, a quiet storm raged. He knew this was the end. Not just for him, but for the monsters that had haunted the edges of human space for centuries. As dawn approached, the first sounds of movement came from the forest. The mist thickened, rolling toward the camp like a living thing. The scanners lit up with hundreds of signals, then thousands. Hale looked up from the console, his voice shaking. "They're surrounding us." Reed nodded. "Then let's welcome them properly." The first wave hit just as the sun rose. The new breed poured out of the trees, their claws glowing blue, their bodies twisting with unnatural energy. Plasma turrets fired, drones exploded in the air, and the ground itself shook under the weight of their charge. The sky turned black with smoke and ash. Reed moved through the chaos like a ghost, striking fast and hard. His armor was cracked, his blade burning hot from use, but he never slowed. Each time a creature fell, two more appeared. "Keep the line," he shouted over the comms. "Don't give them an inch." Elin worked at the console inside the ship, her fingers flying across the controls. "Captain," she called, "we've got 5 minutes before the reactor reaches overload." Reed's voice came through the static. "Good. Hold until then." Outside, the world was fire and fury. The creatures climbed over the barriers, tearing through metal and flesh alike. Mason went down, his scream lost in the roar of battle. Hale grabbed a plasma rifle, firing until the weapon overheated. "They're everywhere," he shouted. Reed cut down another creature, his voice calm even as blood dripped down his arm. "Then we fight everywhere." A massive explosion rocked the camp as one of the fuel tanks went up in flames. The blast threw Elin to the ground. She looked up just in time to see one of the largest creatures, a hybrid of metal and flesh, charging straight toward the ship. She screamed into the comms. "Captain!" Reed turned and saw it. Without hesitation, he sprinted across the battlefield, leaping over debris and wreckage. He hit the creature with full force, slamming it back into the burning remains of a turret. They rolled across the ground, claws and blades flashing. Reed jammed his knife into its neck, blue blood spraying across his visor. The creature howled, slashing his side open, but Reed didn't stop until it stopped moving. "Reactors at 90%. Hale shouted. Reed stumbled to his feet, breathing hard. "Everyone fall back to the ship," he ordered. "Now." Elin helped Hale to his feet as the creatures swarmed closer. They ran toward the ramp, firing wildly. The camp was almost gone now, only smoke and fire remained. Reed was the last one back, limping, bleeding, but still standing. He slammed the hatch shut and staggered toward the console. "How long?" he asked. 1 minute, Elin said. "Then we detonate." Outside, the new breed surrounded the ship, climbing over its hull, tearing at the metal. The sound was deafening. Reed looked at Elin, then at Hale. "You know what to do," he said quietly. Hale shook his head. "You can't be serious." "The remote trigger," Reed cut him off. "It's manual now. I'll stay. You two get to the escape pod." Elin's eyes filled with tears. "No, you can't. That's an order," he said firmly. "Go." Hale grabbed Elin's arm and pulled her toward the pod. She resisted, crying, "Captain, please." Reed gave her a small, tired smile. "Someone has to make sure they stay dead." The pod door closed, sealing with a hiss. Elin's last sight of him was through the window, Reed standing at the console, his hand hovering over the detonation key. As the pod shot into the sky, Reed looked out at the swarm of creatures closing in. "You wanted to be human," he whispered. "Then die like one." He pressed the button. The world erupted in white light. The explosion tore through the valley, vaporizing everything in seconds. The shockwave spread for miles, leveling the forest, the mountains, everything. Then, silence. Hours later, far above the planet, the escape pod drifted through the upper atmosphere. Elin sat staring out the window, tears running down her face. Hale sat beside her, silent. Below them, Xyler burned. The monsters were gone. Humanity had survived, but only because one man refused to let fear win. As the stars appeared beyond the clouds, Elin whispered softly, "Even the apex predator trembled when the human struck." And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, that truth echoed, a warning to everything that might one day threaten humanity again.